Article 312.5c of the National Electrical Code, NEC, addresses the conditions under which cables are permitted to enter a cabinet, cutout box, or meter socket enclosure through the top. Several key provisions ensure safety and proper installation practices are followed. The NEC states that cables entering a cabinet, cutout box, or meter socket enclosure through the top shall be permitted to be supported in the enclosure if all of the following conditions are met. Firstly, the enclosure must be specifically designed for this purpose. Secondly, the cables must be supported within the enclosure in a substantial manner. This support aims to prevent the cables from becoming loose or displaced, ensuring they remain securely positioned. Thirdly, the cables must enter or leave in accordance with Section 300.7 A, which pertains to entering the enclosure through an approved fitting. Fourthly, the cables must be securely fastened in place where they enter or leave the enclosure, providing additional stability and strain relief. Fifthly, the cable sheath must not be subject to mechanical damage. This condition protects the cable's insulation and conductors from physical harm. Sixthly, the conductors must enter or leave through a recognized wiring method, ensuring compliance with established standards. Seventhly, the connection and termination space must be adequate for the number and size of conductors involved, providing sufficient room for safe and effective connections. While the NEC does not explicitly prohibit cables from entering from the bottom of an enclosure, the use of the word shall in requirement indicates a mandatory requirement. This implies that if the enclosure is designed for top entry, cables must be entered from the top. The intent of this requirement is to ensure that cables are properly supported and protected within the enclosure. Entering cables from the bottom can introduce the risk of cables becoming loose or displaced, potentially leading to electrical hazards. Furthermore, entering cables from the top allows for easier access to the connection and termination space, which can facilitate future maintenance or troubleshooting. Consider a scenario where cables are routed into an electrical panel from underneath a house. Without proper support and protection, these cables could be susceptible to damage from moisture, pests, or physical stress. By requiring termination in a junction box before entering the panel, the inspector ensures that the cables are adequately protected and supported. This approach also simplifies future access for inspections, repairs, or modifications. The NEC emphasis on top entry, when the enclosure is designed for it, stems from concerns about cable management and safety. Top entry typically allows for better organization and strain relief, reducing the likelihood of loose connections or insulation damage. Moreover, the availability of adequate connection and termination space is crucial for preventing overcrowding and potential short circuits. When evaluating an electrical installation, inspectors consider several factors to ensure compliance with the NEC. Firstly, they verify that the enclosure is indeed designed for the intended purpose, including top entry if that's the chosen method. Secondly, they assess the quality and security of cable supports within the enclosure. Thirdly, they check that the cables enter through approved fittings, maintaining the integrity of the enclosure. Fourthly, inspectors confirm that the cables are securely fastened at entry and exit points, preventing movement and strain. Fifthly, they examine the cable sheath for any signs of mechanical damage. Sixthly, they ensure that the wiring methods used are recognized and compliant with code requirements. Seventhly, inspectors evaluate whether the connection and termination space is sufficient for the number and size of conductors involved. Meeting these conditions is essential for a safe and code-compliant electrical installation. Failure to comply can lead to violations, safety hazards, and potential liability. Therefore, it's crucial for electricians and installers to thoroughly understand and adhere to the NEC guidelines. Let's explore a practical example to illustrate these concepts. Imagine a residential service replacement where Romex cables are entering a load center from underneath the house. If the load center is designed for top entry, the NEC requires that the cables be routed through a junction box before entering the panel from the bottom. This junction box serves as a transition point, providing support and protection for the cables as they transition from the underhouse environment to the panel. The cables within the junction box must be securely fastened and supported to prevent movement or strain. From the junction box, conduit can be run up to the bottom of the load center, providing a protected pathway for the conductors. Inside the load center, the conductors must be properly terminated and the connection space must be adequate for the number and size of conductors. This approach ensures compliance with the NEC requirements and promotes a safe and reliable electrical installation. Now let's consider some common challenges that electricians may encounter when implementing these requirements. One challenge is ensuring that the enclosure is properly designed for top entry. This may involve consulting manufacturer specifications or seeking guidance from an electrical engineer. Another challenge is providing adequate support for the cables within the enclosure. This may require the use of cable ties, clamps, or other support devices. Additionally, electricians may face challenges in providing sufficient connection and termination space, especially in older installations where panel sizes may be limited. In these cases, it may be necessary to upgrade the panel to accommodate the new wiring. To overcome these challenges, it's important for electricians to stay up to date on the latest NEC requirements and best practices. Continuing education courses, industry publications, and online resources can provide valuable information and guidance. Furthermore, collaboration with experienced electricians and electrical engineers can help to ensure that installations are safe, compliant, and reliable. The NEC emphasis on top entry for certain electrical enclosures reflects a commitment to safety and reliability. By requiring proper support, protection, and access to connections, the code aims to minimize the risk of electrical hazards and ensure the long-term performance of electrical systems. Electricians and installers who understand and adhere to these requirements contribute to a safer and more reliable electrical infrastructure. Moreover, compliance with the NEC can help to prevent costly violations and potential liability. In summary, Article 312.5 C of the NEC provides specific guidelines for cable entry into electrical enclosures, particularly emphasizing top entry when the enclosure is designed for it. These requirements are intended to ensure that cables are properly supported, protected, and that adequate access is provided for connections and terminations. While the NEC does not explicitly prohibit bottom entry, it implies that top entry is mandatory when the enclosure is designed for it. The intent of these requirements is to minimize the risk of electrical hazards and promote the long-term reliability of electrical systems. By understanding and adhering to these guidelines, electricians and installers can contribute to a safer and more compliant electrical environment. This explanation should provide a comprehensive understanding of the NEC requirements for cable entry into electrical enclosures, as well as the rationale behind these requirements. Remember to always consult the latest edition of the NEC for the most up-to-date information and guidance.